Okay, perfect. Okay. Hi everyone. Welcome to today's seminar and info session by the CSU Legal Information Clinic. Um, Before we begin, right, I'd just like to begin by acknowledging that Concordia University is located on unceded indigenous lands. The Kanakahaga Nation is recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather today. Jokjogi, Montreal, is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations, and today it's home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationship with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. So the immigration info session today is entitled "Immigrating to Canada and Quebec: Changes and Updates." Um, it's a seminar which is particularly timely because, as our presenter, Maitre Ho Sun Kim, will explain to us the laws and regulations concerning immigration, particularly for Quebec, and even on the federal level, will be undergoing major changes at the beginning November and as well near the throughout the month of November. Okay. My name is Walter Chian Tom. I am the manager of the CSU Legal Information Clinic, and as well, we have with us today one of our supervising lawyers, Katie Sykes, and as well as our administrative assistant, Isabella. So one thing I also want to just make sure that everyone is aware of is that the present presentation is being recorded. So it's important that even though cameras are turned off and that the everyone, our participants will be muted, that all questions must be submitted through the chat and answered accordingly by the presenter. And for this reason, right, if you don't feel comfortable using your real name, then please don't, use your real name in the chat. Okay, so just use a, whatever a pseudonym or whatever else. But the chat will be part of the recording, and as such, both questions and responses to the questions on issues of immigration, right, will be available to everyone. Okay, so it's a real pleasure today to present to you Maitre Ho Sung Kim. Maitre Kim is a lawyer who has, I've known for like, I guess, pretty, probably decades by now, Maitre Kim. Maitre Kim is from originally from Seoul, South Korea. He comes from an economic immigration himself, as his parents arrived in Quebec as entrepreneurs in the early 1990s. Maitre Kim has been passionate about immigration since he started his career and has been an expert in economic immigration since 2009. His experience and expertise make him a seasoned professional who understands all the challenges and aspects of immigration, which adds value to his practice and to the guidance he offers his clients. Okay, and and more importantly, the his contributions to immigration, particularly Maitre Kim, oftentimes is consulted by government officials, both federal and provincial, about immigration policy. Maitre Kim actually just came back this week from Quebec City from an immigration conference, and he is truly, one of the foremost lawyers on Quebec immigration law. And so we're extremely privileged to have his presence today. And he's part as well of our immigration network. So if ever you need access to an immigration lawyer, Maitre Kim would be happy to assist you, provide, of course, his availability. Okay. And that being said, um, we'll hand you over to Matthew Kim.
Thank you, Walter, for the presentation. So, hello, everybody. Yeah, I am presenting you today this webinar about immigration to Canada and Quebec. So, there are a few updates that has been made since my last presentation in the spring. So, we'll start right away. So, we will look, at the overview of the Canadian and Quebec immigration system. And then we're going to talk about the postgraduate work permit changes that has been announced recently. And then we'll tackle into PQ and PSTQ, which are the Quebec skilled worker programs. And then at last, we're looking to express entry and some PMPs. So, as you can see in the overview, the Canadian permanent immigration, there are three big categories. There is the economic immigration, refugee, and family class. So today we're going to be focusing on the economic class, and on the economic class there are three subcategories: skilled workers, caregivers, and business. So we're not going to look into business or caregiver programs. So we're going to specifically focus on skilled workers because we're targeting the university graduates. So as you can see in the skilled worker program, we have another three subcategories: express entry on the federal side, provincial nominees for each provinces, and Quebec's election. It's Quebec. It's we're in a unique province, so we have our own system. So we're gonna look into what kind of program that you can qualify. So before we go into permanent residency programs, we're gonna talk about the postgraduate work permit changes that has been announced recently, which will come into effect soon in November 1st this year. So first thing you have to understand what is the general postgraduate work permit eligibility requirements. So these general requirements will continue to apply even after November 1st. So first thing, you need to have completed a study program at a DLI, and Concordia University is a DLI. And since Concordia is a university, the program has to be at least 8 months long, which lead to a degree, bachelor's, master's, or doctorate, or to a diploma or to a certificate. So basically, a certificate program within the Concordia University is eligible for PGWP. Second condition is that you must have maintained full-time status as a student during each semester of your study program, except for your summer courses. And there are other exceptions. So you can be enrolled as a part-time in the final semester in order to complete your program. Or if you have an approved leave from the studies, that's also that will also be considered. And there are some exceptions, that can apply during the COVID times. Other than these exceptions, yeah, you have to be enrolled to your studies as a full-time student. So basically, I think for university students, we're talking about 12 credits minimum per semester. So if you go under that, yeah, you're not eligible for the PHWP. The third one is I have a study permit that has been valid within the last 180 days. So basically, since you complete your studies, you have 180 days to apply for your postgraduate work permit. Yes, Kayla.
Yeah, does it make sense for me to ask questions, or I should ask them in the chat later with the students?
Oh, I think you can ask yeah during the presentation
Yeah.
if you think
So
there. Yeah.
we've had a number of students come into the clinic over the years who have had to take a leave of studies due to a sickness. Sometimes it could be a mental health issue. And I'm wondering, like, what are IRCC's criteria? Are they accepting these explanations, generally speaking? And what kind of proof would the student need to show for that? Like a
Yeah.
medical
So
exception?
basically, the approved leave. Yeah, I've seen the cases where like sometimes it's it's a total leave that you're suspending your studies, or it could be you know part-time leave, and then you're enrolled as part-time students. So usually IRCC officers, will be very strict with these rules. But I think it was this week. I saw in the listserv within the immigration lawyer circle that there is actually a case at the federal court where the court said the officer has the obligation to look into the everything, the all the situation regarding the student. So basically, if the student is able to demonstrate why he was not able to maintain the full-time status, and then have a valid reasons such as medical reasons, I think it's something that you could, yeah, bring up.
Hmm.
And yeah, Walter.
Yeah, and just to, I don't want to break up too much, uh, but once again, I just want to, because we've had many students, right, that once again because of COVID, right, they weren't able to. They had to take the time off between March 2020 and even after the fall semester 2020, right? So uh, and up to I think like last year, okay, because I see in your presentation it says it's only COVID between March 2020 and fall semester 2020. There seemed to be opening by Immigration Quebec for up to like maybe the reopening at 2023.
Yeah, well, but I mean, because there's some difference between the Quebec when they're issuing the new CAQs and the PGWP requirements. It's also another thing, right? So it's this. So I think there's some discrepancy between the two governments, and like for Quebec, it's mostly if you need to renew your study permit that you have to reapply for the CAQ, and then Quebec actually looks into the to the fact whether you've been studying. For Quebec, they're not looking into the full-time status. When you look at the regulation of the Quebec, it says your studies are the main purpose of your stay in Quebec. So for me, it's easier to argue in that case where when you actually are enrolled as a part-time student because you have other reasons, it could be COVID, it could be other mental health issues or other health issues. You're still in Quebec studying, and your study is your main purpose of your stay in Quebec. But for RCC, they specifically specify that you have to maintain your full-time status as a student in order to be eligible for PGWP. So if we're gonna apply for PGWP with the exceptions, I think yeah we need to you have to bring up pretty good documentation and arguments to explain yeah why you're entitled to your PGWP.
Yeah, yeah, because it would seem weird, right, that Quebec would accept someone for a renewed CAQ, right, in order to, you know,
Finish
as a
the
full time,
studies.
yeah, studies and that, uh, well, I guess I mean Quebec usually accepts the renewed CAQ. The IRCC would automatically give the study permit. I don't know if there's been contestation at the back end. That's the problem. The back end. like the PGWP. But anyways, we're not gonna get too much into this, right? But yeah.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the other thing is because, because we're talking about Concordia students, but, there are other institutions that are not, you know, they are DLIs, but they don't have, right to PGWP. So really the study permit, part and the PGW part, they are distinct. So it's not because you have a, CAQ and a study permit that, you're eligible for PGWP. So I think that's the nuance that that you have to understand. So the third condition, is that you must have had a study permit, within the last 180 days. One thing that you have to be careful is your study permit expires after 90 days of the completion of your studies. So even though you have 6 months to apply for a postgraduate work permit, if you actually apply after 90 days and you're still in Canada, technically you're out of status. So if that's the case, then you will need to apply for restoration at the same time, and possibly an extension of study permit, at the same time in order to, be able to, apply for a PGWP. So, or the other option is that, if you're past 90 days and you're out of status, you can simply quit Canada and apply from overseas as well. One thing that you cannot do is flat polling. So flat polling days for PGWP has ended, so you cannot apply for PGWP at the border or at the airport. So the application has to be made online. So, and your studies are deemed to be completed upon receipt of one of the three things: official letter stating that you have completed your studies from the school, your final transcripts, or your diploma. So if one of these things has happened, then it's the first occurrence of these three that will determine the date of your completion. So it's not, even if your semester ends at, let's say, at the end of April, the 90 days doesn't kick in, from May 1st. It's when you are going to receive your letter from the school. So what is changing to PGWP? So if you apply, first of all, if you apply for your postgraduate work permit before November 1st, so by October 31st, then the current rules apply without any changes. So if you have graduated and you're thinking about, if you've been waiting for, applying for PGWP, maybe it's time to apply right away. If you apply after November 1st, there are two differences, two scenarios. So first one is if your study permit application has been submitted before November 1st, which will be the case for the most of you guys, then the only change is that on top of the general requirements, you must meet the language requirement as well. So the language requirement for university, it's CLB 7 or NCLC 7 in French as well. So you have to pass either IELTS LP PT Core, or for French, TEF Canada or TCF Canada. So if you're graduating in, let's say, in December, then you have to get prepared, to pass these tests in advance, so you can apply for your PGWP once you graduate. And for the new students coming in after November 1st, if the study permit application has been submitted after November 1st, on top of the language requirement, there will be field of study requirement as well. For bachelor's, master's, doctoral program, there are eight, I mean, all fields of study are eligible. So if you're in a bachelor program, you don't have to worry about anything. You're eligible. But if you're in a certificate program in a university, then you will have to look into the classification of instructional programs that is used by the IRCC to determine whether your field of study is eligible for PGWP or not. So I have included the link, so you can go take a look. The list is quite long, uh, but it's also subject to changes, over time. So when it's gonna be time for you to apply, it would be, it would be best that you visit this website to to know if your study program is included or not. Yes, Gail.
Yeah, so this is a pretty big change. And I just had a question about whether this is the initial study permit application or any study permit application. So, for instance, students who need to renew their CAQ and study permit and will be submitting an extension. Um, does this change apply to them?
We say if you're not changing your program and you're just like extending the study permit because there has been delays in your program, I think it's the initial study permit that applies. But this is something that has to be clarified with IRCC for sure.
Okay.
But if you're changing the program, for sure it's the second application that will apply. So I think it's gonna depend on your situation.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And so one of the students is asking if you're a student at Concordia for 4 years and the program is in English, do we still need to take the test? So
Yes, you
yes,
do.
unfortunately. Yeah.
I know it doesn't make sense, but immigration policies usually don't make sense. So don't, never look for, any logic into immigration policies in Canada. There is no logic. Okay, so leave that out. You have to stick to the rules that are in place. So it's same thing like express entry. Even if your native language is English, you still need to pass the language test in order to be eligible for permanent residency as well. So for sure, there's some difference between Canada and Quebec in that regard because Quebec does acknowledge your studies as the proof of your language criteria, but for Canada, yeah, they stick to very strict rule that everybody, including Americans, British, everybody needs to pass English test or French tests. All right, so we're gonna go into now to the permanent residency. Is there any are there any more questions about PGWP changes? Everything is good.
In any
The
case,
one thing that I just wanted to quickly mention to the students is that if they're doing a French test, probably they're going to look at the TEFAC, and you'll note that for the post-graduation work permit, it's not on the list of accepted French tests, the TEFAC.
Yeah, it's only TEF Canada or TCF Canada. So basically, if you're not unsure whether you're gonna go, outside Quebec or not for your permanent residency, I'd recommend that you do either TEF Canada or TCF Canada because both tests are recognized by Quebec Immigration Quebec as well.
yeah. I also want to bring up the fact that once again, right, even though really we passed briefly on the change to the postgrad work permit, right, that we'll be continuing to offer um, information on this, legal information on this, to the Concordia community. All they need to do is contact the legal information clinic, and as well as I mentioned at the beginning, we have a whole network of lawyers experienced, such as Maitre Ho Sun Kim, who can provide us additional clarifications. So don't panic.
TOEFL was never accepted for immigration purposes. So yeah. All right, so we're gonna go into Programme de l'Expérience Québécoise, so Quebec Experience Program, the first Quebec Skilled Worker Program that's available. So when you look at the whole picture of the immigration programs, you see there is the PEQ. There are two subcategories into it: students and temporary workers. So how does the PEQ work? So first you have to assess your eligibility in the PEQ, either Quebec graduate stream or temporary foreign worker stream. And if you deem that you're eligible for the PEQ program, then you have to apply online in the Arima portal for your CSQ, Quebec Selection Certificate. The processing time for CSQ is about approximately 6 months these days. It could be a bit, shorter, a bit longer, depending on the cases, but it's generally, processed within 6 months. Once you have your CSQ, you're gonna have the acceptance letter online in the Arima portal, but the original CSQ is still mailed out to your to your address. So once you have your CSQ, then you apply for your PR also online in the PR portal or within IRCC website. And the PR right now, it takes approximately 9 to 12 months for Quebec skilled worker programs. So the process is quite simple. So what you have to just analyze your situation, whether you'll qualify for the program or not, and then apply for a CSQ and then PR eventually. So there are two streams: PQ, Quebec graduates, and temporary foreign workers. And since 2021, the application is online through our Arima portal, but you have to still fill out the forms and sign the form as well, and upload the forms in the Arima portal. For Quebec graduate stream, the general conditions are the following. First, you have to be at least 18 years old. Second, you have to have the intention to settle in Quebec to work for a company over which you do not exercise control, that are you're likely able to hold. This definition will be important for you guys if you are planning to apply under PEQ program, because with your PGWP, you can basically work for a company, but you can also launch your own company as well. But if that's what you're doing, then you're gonna be excluded from the PEQ program. So self-employed entrepreneurs, you're not qualifying under the PEQ. So that's something that you have to understand. Third condition is do not intend to work in one of the ineligible employment sectors. The fourth one is that you have to have the French level 7 according to Échelle québécoise des niveaux de compétences en français. So that's a B2 level. And if you have a spouse, then the spouse has to also have a level 4, A2 level in speaking and listening only. And the last one is that you have to demonstrate a financial self-sufficiency, which is simply you need to sign a form, which is prepared within the general PEQ application forms. All right. Yes, Gail.
Yeah, one of the questions that we often get from students coming into the clinic is if they have to have a job at the time that they make the CSQ application. And it's been our understanding that the answer is no, based on the procedural guide. But maybe you can just speak about whether they have to presently have a job when they're submitting the application.
So basically, for PQ Quebec graduate streams, there is no requirement, to hold a job when you apply. So it's basically it's the second criteria that I mentioned is your intention to settle in Quebec to work. So as long as you can, demonstrate to the officer that you're gonna work, you're looking for work, and you're not intending to, go back to school. That's pretty much what's important. And
Mm-hmm.
the other thing is, as I mentioned, if you're thinking about running your own business, that maybe become a trouble for PEQ programs.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so there are some questions on the chat. Do the graduate students at Concordia need to pass French exam in order to get their degree, like other colleges in Quebec? I think it's not an immigration question. Cal, do you have a response to this? I don't think it's the case, but
Yeah, I'm not sure about that question, Rahul, but I don't think that for Concordia graduates, in order to get the diploma, that there's any French exam that needs to be passed. I'm not sure. I don't believe that that's a requirement of Concordia University, but we can look into that for you just to verify that information.
I think it's probably for Sejep. So, and I'm
Yeah,
not even sure. Yeah.
I think there's a confusion by the person between passing the university degree and passing the professional order um,
Hmm.
requirement. You know, and the way I look upon it, for example, is one can have a degree in law, but they have to pass professional training and other requirements, and there might be the same thing, for example, with other professional orders, which I'm sure.
Yeah. All right. Can we apply for the CSQ before applying for the PGWP? So the answer is yes. The only thing is that you have to prove that you're still in status in Canada. So basically, if you haven't applied for your PGWP and more than 90 days have passed by, then yeah, probably you're out of status. So do we need to show any bank amount for this stream, or financial self-sufficiency is just a form signing? So yeah, so demonstrating financial self-sufficiency is a requirement in all Quebec economic programs. And there is a table with the amounts depending on your family member, number of family members included. So usually for one person, it's around like $3,000 or $4,000, but there is no requirement to prove that you have these funds in your bank account. So usually, you have to just sign the form. But yeah, you're signing the form saying that you have these amounts. All right, I did the TEFAC earlier this year. Can I use these results for my CSQ application? Yes, your TEFAC results are valid for 2 years. And you mentioned speaking and listening French language requirements. What about writing and reading? Are there any conditions? At this time, as of not right now, you don't have uh, other requirements other than speaking and writing, speaking and listening. Writing and reading, the changes will come into effect later on. But when the changes to the Quebec graduate stream comes into effect on the November 23rd, basically Concordia University diploma will not be eligible for the PQ. All right. Do I qualify to apply for PEQ if I started my master's? So basically, no. PEQ program for a student program. One of the condition is that, as you saw, you have to have the intent to settle in Quebec to work, not to study. So if you have started another program, then you'll have to, finish that program before applying for PEQ. I'll go into it. Working as a real estate leasing agent is not eligible to apply for the PEQ program. So, yes, as you saw on the number 3, real estate, commerce, leasing, brokerage, or development, sectors. So basically, it's not only real estate agents. If you're, let's say, you're bookkeeper in that sector, then you're not eligible. It's the business sector that's important, not your job title. So if you're working for a company within the real estate commerce industry, then you're not eligible to use the PEQ. I think, someone asked about 75% of the courses should be in French. So that's the new changes that's going to come into effect on November 23rd. So your study program has to be in French in majority. And when we say your study program is in French, 75% of the courses must be done in French. So I don't think Concordia has any program that's given in French. Yeah.
I'm not sure about that. I think that there's a French literature program possibly, but that might meet this requirement. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, for sure they've been working on it ever since last summer. Whether or not they've got it into place, and more importantly, whether or not Immigration Quebec actually recognizes it is a whole nother question. And it's the same situation with all the English education institutions as well, including McGill.
Yeah.
So, but that is definitely something. I'm sure it's a work in progress.
So for Quebec graduate stream, the specific conditions. So yeah, you have to be legally in Quebec at the time of application. So you don't have any requirement to be working in Quebec. You have to be in Quebec legally, and you must have obtained your diploma from Quebec DLI in the past 3 years, and you have stayed in Quebec for the main purpose of study and for at least half of the duration of the program in Quebec. And you have complied with any condition for the return to the country imposed by a bursary for studying in Quebec if you have benefited from such a bursary. And actually, actually there is a writing and reading French level 5 requirement for the student stream. So this is actually, in effect, so you have to do the TEFAP speaking, listening B2 and writing and reading B1.
Yeah, that was one thing I was going to ask for clarification about, because our clinic had been giving students the information that if they're submitting in the PEC graduate stream now, even before November the 23rd, that they needed to have the written French as well.
Yeah, this was the changes that was made last November.
Yeah.
And that came into effect right away. Yeah. So that was my mistake in my answer previously. But so you need the B2 oral, B1 in writing. And as of November 23rd, which is in exactly 1 month from now, only the programs in French, which means at least 75% of courses or credit must have been in French, will be eligible. Or if you have completed at least 3 years of full-time studies in French at the secondary or post-secondary level, you are still eligible for PQ, even if your program is in English. So you must have done minimum 3 years of full-time studies before Concordia in order to be eligible for PQ student stream as of November 23rd. So yeah. So anybody coming from non-French speaking countries as of November 23rd, Concordia programs, McGill programs, and English programs will not be eligible for PEQ graduate streams. So what are the eligible diplomas? Bachelor's, master's, PhD, the college studies, which is technical training, not the 2 year university, destined program. The diploma of vocational studies of at least 1,800 hours, or DVS followed by attestation of vocational specializations, also minimum of 1,800 hours combined. Those are the only programs eligible. So basically, a certificate program in any university, is not eligible for Quebec graduate stream. What are the proofs of knowledge in French? So if you've done your studies in French in Quebec, the final transcripts, which tells that you have successfully completed the program in Quebec entirely in French. Transcripts showing you have completed at least 3 years of full-time study in French for secondary or post-secondary level. Any Quebec professional or attestation letter, or French language test results. And if you have a level 7 French course that you have passed in 2020, I don't think this is something that's going to apply to many people now, but that's the transitional measure that's in place. All right. Temporary. Now we're gonna go into PQ, temporary foreign worker stream. So basically, if you plan to stay in Quebec, and then if you're gonna apply for the PQ after November 23rd, and you only have Concordia diploma, then the only program that you can apply would be either a PQ worker stream or the new PSTQ program. So for the worker program, the general conditions are pretty much the same. So you need to be at least 18 years old. You have to, you have to be, you have to have the intention to settle in Quebec to work. You must not be working in eligible employment sectors. Speaking and listening level 7 for you. Speaking and listening level 4 for your spouse. And the financial self-sufficiency. So it's pretty much the same thing for the general conditions. For the specific conditions, you have to be legally in Quebec for the main purpose of working at the time of application. So for PQ worker stream, you must be working when you're applying. So if, let's say, you have worked for 2 years, and then if you stop for working, then you cannot apply. You will need to find another job. Once you start the job, you may apply. Second condition is occupy a profession tier 0, 1, 2, or 3 of the NOC level. So basically, also, your profession should not be in one of the inadmissible sectors, and it's not it has to be for a company that, that you don't have any control. So once again, PQ workers, if you're self-employed or you have your own company, you're not eligible for this program. And you must have at least 24 months of work experience in Quebec in the past 3 years. So same thing, tier 0, 1, 2, or 3. And you must have occupied the profession legally in Quebec. So you must have had a valid work permit. And you must have occupied on a full-time basis. Full-time means 30 hours a week. Unlike Express Entry or Quebec Regular Skilled Worker Program, we cannot do, let's say, 20 hours per week and do kind of like a pro rata calculation. That's not possible for PQ worker stream. You must have occupied on a full-time basis, minimum 30 hours for 2 years. And you must have been remunerated as well for your work. So any volunteer work will not work. For the proof of knowledge in French, it's pretty much same thing with as the student stream. The only difference is that the worker stream doesn't have that the completion of the study program in Quebec. So you didn't study, you don't have to have studied in Quebec, so that criteria is out. But you could also show transcripts of at least 3 years of full-time study in French or French test results. French evaluation interview. So Immigration Quebec is still continuing to call PAQ applicants for an in-person interview to evaluate the French level. Even if you have submitted your file results. And this interview can also be called for your spouse, if you have one, to test their level 4 results. So it could go either way. So at the interview, if the officer thinks you have at least the level 7, then you will have your CSQ. But if they don't think you have the level 6, 7, you have a level below than level 6, then your CSQ application will be refused. And sometime when your application is refused for this reason, it is very important to find out whether Immigration Quebec's decision tells you that you have made a false declaration on your French knowledge or not, because this may result in a ban of 5 years. I believe because many people have challenged this decision, I don't think Immigration Quebec issues such a letter at this time, but you never know. So, all right.
Just quickly, I know in the past that that a lot of immigration lawyers were talking about students from certain countries, particularly being targeted by these evaluations. Does MIFI is that still a concern?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, I don't think if he's calling in any French people to to pass the interview for sure. So it's mostly if it's from a country that's not known as French speaking country, then yeah, you can be targeted.
Okay.
So in the past, for sure, all this started with with Chinese students and Indian students who applied massively under this program using the French level 7 courses. But yeah, Now I think it's not only those countries, but any other country that is deemed to be non-francophone, you can be
Is at
targeted.
risk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
I think there is one question. Any reading and writing requirement for the PQ worker stream? There is no requirement for the reading or writing for the PQ worker programs. The reading and writing is only required for the PQ students. I still left this in. I mean, there is still transitional measures, following a reform of July 2020, 2020. I think it's going to be, pretty much obsolete in few years. But if you had a valid work permit at that time, you may qualify under the old rules. Same, well, for the Quebec graduate, I think this is, yeah, it's obsolete because we're talking about the diploma obtained before 2021. And if you have a Quebec diploma from December 2020, 3 years have passed by anyways. So that diploma is no longer eligible for PQ student stream. So if I finished my bachelor's, started my master's, but withdraw from my master's now, I still cannot apply for PQ. Well, basically, you have to see what your status is then. And if you abandon your master's program, then you'll probably be eligible for PQ student stream. But yeah, there's a lot to analyze before taking that path. So I think it's best that you consult first the legal clinic and then see what's the best course of action to take. Regarding the internship done during the degree for the PEQ program, it's not going to be actually. I'll have to check that. There is a provision in the Quebec regulation that does acknowledge the co-op work, uh, but there is a limit to how much time that can be considered. I don't think it goes over 3 months or 6 months. So, and it must have been done in full time, anyways. Yes, Walter.
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that it's now 1:30. The present info session is finishing at 2, but that for any questions that haven't been, you know, answered in this form, and even if they have been answered, once again, as Maitre Kim has stated, please come see us at the Legal Information Clinic, and we'll be happy to serve you. So, Maitre Kim, will you be covering as well some of the express entry
Yep.
material? Okay.
So this is just technical things that, yeah, you need to do the attestation of learning about democratic values and Quebec values that everybody passes anyway. So yeah, it's just a technical thing that once you apply, for your CSQ application, you'll have to pass this test that pretty much everybody passes. And I usually tell my clients, if you fail these tests, I think it's better you don't apply for immigration to Canada because it's really, really basic. And the processing fee it's about $900. It's gonna go up about 2 or 3% in January. I'll go quickly for the knock. So we've talked about tier 0, 1, 2, 3 for the PQ worker stream. So NOC, it means National Occupational Classification. And as of 2022, there is a NOC 2021 that is a new 5-number code that is used to classify each profession in Canada. So basically, with the 5 numbers, the level 0, 1, 2, 3 is the second number that qualifies you under the tier category. So basically, 0 means you're in management occupation. 1, 2, usually requires a university, professional, college diploma. Number 3 is either vocational or college diploma. Number 4 and 5 are deemed to be not non-qualified jobs. So once you have your permanent resident, once you have your CSQ, then you have to apply for the PR in the PR portal of Immigration Canada. And the processing fees, it's about $1,500 for one single applicant. Permanent resident status, once you have your confirmation of permanent residency, then you will receive also a permanent resident card, and you have 2 years of Canadian presence required as PR. So you have to live in Canada at least 730 days for 5-year period. Okay. And there is this new Quebec skilled worker program. I think since we have to cover also express entry, I'm going to go pretty fast on the PSTQ. This is the second part of the Quebec skilled worker program. The processing is slightly different, so it's pretty much similar to express entry on the federal side. So you have to make your declaration of interest in the ARIMA portal, and then Quebec government decides whether to send out the invitation or not. When you get the invitation, then you can apply for your CSQ and then eventually PR. So the new PSTQ, Programme de Sélection de Travail Qualifié, will come into force on November 29th, so approximately in 1 month. Until then, the old PRTQ is still in effect. And yeah, declaration of interest is managed by ministerial order. So there is a new ministerial order which is in effect until 2026. So once again, for PSTQ, the general conditions, it's also pretty much similar to the PEQ general conditions. But number 4, you can see you have to satisfy invitation criteria to make the CSQ application. So basically, if you don't have invitation, you're not going to be able to apply under this program. There are four streams under PSTQ. The first stream is high qualification and specialized competencies. You have to occupy a profession of tier 0, 1, 2, and minimum 1 year of your work experience in the past 5 years. The work experience doesn't need to be in Quebec. It could be elsewhere as well. And you have to have, minimum diploma, university diploma, technical college diploma, even the vocational diplomas are acknowledged. And you must have the French knowledge of level 7 for speaking and listening, level 5 for writing and reading, and level 4 for the spouse. So now the PSTQ, it's no longer point-based system. It's either you meet these conditions or not. So when you get your invitation and you meet these conditions, then you will be able to apply for your CSQ. Stream 2 it's for the occupations for tier 3, 4, or 5. For this stream, you need to have minimum 2 years of work experience in this profession, and at least 1 year of that experience must be in Quebec. And for this stream, only a general secondary diploma will get you qualified. French knowledge for this program is actually only level 5 for speaking and listening, and level 4 for a spouse. So there is no requirement for writing or reading for stream 2. Stream 3 is regulated professions. So now any profession that's regulated by a professional order, you have to pass through stream 3, not the 1 or 2. And if you're under these category, then you have to actually take the process to get your license in Quebec with the professional order. So you'll have to have some kind of letter from the professional order that tells you that you have either complete recognition or partial recognition. And the French level knowledge will depend on the level of your occupation. So tier 0, 1, 2, it's level 7 for speaking and listening, level 5 for writing and reading, and only level 5 for speaking and listening for tier 3, 4, 5. So some examples. So there are 2 sections to it. So section A is the non-professions for which a practice authorization is always required. So architects, engineers, lawyers, nurses, etc. Section B is professions which practice authorization is not always required, such as like accountants, healthcare managers. So you have the list. So it's a list that's drafted by the Quebec government. So if you're under these 74 or 92 professions, you can only use the stream 3. Stream 4, it's exceptional talent stream. So basically you have to, it's a very, very niche program. It's not for everybody. It's definitely not for a recent bachelor graduate. So you must have a recognized achievement linked to your expertise with minimum 3 years of work experience. And I think if you only have 3 years of work experience, I think it's going to be pretty hard to qualify under this stream. Scale.
Yeah, so for the master's and PhD students here who are probably wondering, is this maybe an option for them eventually? When we're talking about 3 years work experience, does it have to be in Quebec or it could be in their country of origin?
It could be in their country of origin.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, it really focuses, I think, like for researchers or professionals that are highly regarded in the academic field. But as it's mentioned, you need to have you have to prove that you're the expert of experts in your field. So
the bar is quite high for this stream. And is there a language requirement for it?
This one, no. There is no language requirement for the stream 4.
Yeah. So yeah.
That's pretty much the only program that's there that doesn't require any French.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Bill Gates exception,
Yeah.
So,
so for the PRTQ, which is still in effect until November 28th, I'm not going to go into it too much. It's point-based system. You still need the invitation. And yeah, if you have, if you haven't received any invitation so far under the PRTQ yet, I don't think this is something that's gonna apply to you anyway. So yeah, we'll just skip these parts. Uh, Validated job offer. This is a section which applies both to PRTQ, but also to invitation. So the new PSTQ program doesn't refer to validated job offer. So it's not a condition to qualify under the new PSTQ. However, this will continue to be important if you want to have a higher chance of invitation under our email. So still something, yeah, very important, because you're gonna see the rounds of invitations that was done in 2024. You're gonna see the last one was last month, September 19th, 1,650 people. There were two sets of invitations. One was 573 points in ARIMA or more with French level 7 requirements, or if you had a job validation validated job offer outside of Montreal. So basically, if you have an employment outside of Montreal, the validated job offer is still something that will, give you the invitation. So you can see it's job offers been in each invitation round since the beginning of the year. And like there was only like a couple of times, once in July and the other one in April, that the Quebec government used NOC occupations with the points. Yes, Walter.
Yeah, and when we talk about Montreal, it's the island of Montreal. So, for example, a job offer in Laval or the South Shore, right? Will that count as outside of Montreal?
No, it's when we say Montreal, CMM stands for Communauté Métropolitaine de Montréal. It's pretty vast. So Laval, Longueuil, Boucherville, all under CMM.
And
You
West
have to go
Island
quite far.
and
West
West
Island is
Island
still
as well.
CMM. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they actually, the Immigration Quebec has a list of the cities that that fall under CMM. So when I looked at the list, it's quite long.
It's pretty much the island of Montreal and a little bit more, anyways.
Yep, definitely. So I mean, the rounds of invitation, it's pretty constant for Quebec as well. So it's probably going to be the future of the skilled worker program, next year, 2025. So if you do not qualify under PQ because you graduated, from Concordia, PSTQ is something that, you may look into it, because unlike the PQ worker, you only require 1 year of experience, not 2 years. And for those 3 times, there were 3 invitations with the NOG occupations. And you see here, they used NOG 2016 and not 2021. So it's the old NOG, they're using it. Instead of 5 numbers, it's 4 numbers. So, but the occupations, they're pretty much in IT or healthcare or in the school. There was one time on April that we have, construction workers. A lot of the times it's mostly IT, concentrated. So just to give you a simple idea, because the invitation requires you about 570, 80 points for you to get the invitation at this time. For a single candidate who's, let's say, 28 years old, you have a bachelor degree in computer engineering, you have a health score 6.0, you have a French speaking and listening B2 with no experience. As you can see, the total you can get is only 450. It's not high. And we're not gonna, French speaking and listening B2, that's a requirement. You need to have that. So if you don't have that, I mean, we're going nowhere anyways. Let's say,
Is there? So you are doing other scenarios. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So basically, if you were 28 years old when you graduated, now 1 year later, you have 6 months of work experience in total in Quebec as a software engineer. What does it change? You're getting 20 points more in experience in Quebec. So you're still far from 570. If you have 1 year of skilled experience, then the points go up high. So from 450, now you're getting 610. So rather than doing the PQ, which requires 2 years, maybe 1 year of skilled work experience in Quebec, you may qualify under the RIMA and PSTQ. So because I looked into, we're looking at computer engineering. If I change that major into chemistry and still 1 year of experience, there is a slight change. Your point go down to 570. So you're at the borderline. So it's gonna be critical to see how many points you can get with your degree and how you can, increase your points is usually experience in Quebec and language requirements, especially French. And also the validated job offer, even within Montreal, you're gonna get 180 points extra. So even if the validated job offer in Montreal does not guarantee an invitation in Arima, it still gives you a big number in your points. So 180 points, it can be a game changer. So refusal of examination. So this is something that was new last November. So basically what it's saying is if you have not respected your stay conditions while you're a student or worker in Quebec, they may refuse to process your PR application. So first one is candidate who in the 5 years preceding the application studied or worked in Quebec without study permit or work permit, or did not respect the conditions attached to the permit, then they may refuse your application. So any illegal work or study, in Quebec, there could be a bar. The foreign student who, in the past 5 years, has now received the education for the level of studies or the cycle of studies for which the CAQ was issued. So it is extremely important that, if you're switching your studies from one program to another, you have to ensure that you have a valid CQ. If that's not the case, then your PR application in Quebec may be refused. So basically, you were enrolled, let's say, in a master's program, you switch to either bachelor or certificate program, you should not start the new program without your new CAQ and study permit. The foreign student who in the 5 years preceding the application has not made his studies his main activity. So as I mentioned before, Quebec's talking about, studies as your main activity, not full-time status. So as long as your studies are your main activity in Quebec, you're okay. But yeah, if you're on a part-time, for several semesters, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be harder to argue that that is your main activity in your life. So another futile possibility is if a student has not maintained health insurance for the entire duration of your study. So this is something, yeah, which is relatively minor, I'd say, but the consequence could be huge if you don't have your health insurance intact during your studies. So yeah, I mean, this is in effect, and I'm pretty sure there are some cases, that are coming up because there are refusals there, that have been made according to these sections of the law. So I mean, we'll have to see, if there will be any court challenges in the future or not. So if you encounter one of these situations, it will be extremely critical that you seek legal counsel because it will have a huge impact in your file.
Yeah.
Yes, Walter.
Maitre Kim, it's now 1:52, so theoretically you have like 8 minutes left, but I think
No, that's the recording amount of time, Walter. It's only 1:18 right now.
1:18. Okay, you have more time, but we just wanted
We're
to
good.
give you an idea of time.
So basically, what has changed under PSTQ and PRTQ? So basically, the expression of interest system REMA continues to apply under the new program, but there is no point system with PSTQ. And the PRTQ focuses more on the education. The new PSTQ focuses on your profession, not your studies. And yeah, another thing is, yeah, absolute criterion of knowledge of French except the stream 4. So you need minimum level 5 for the stream 2, speaking and listening, but usually it's level 7 for speaking and listening, and even writing and reading level 5 for the stream 1. And as I mentioned before, validated job offer, it's still important, especially if you're working outside Montreal, because that will guarantee you an invitation. All right, we'll go into express entry. So as you can see, under the 3 categories of skilled workers, it's the federal part. So it covers pretty much federal skilled workers, skilled trades, CEC, and some PMPs. So how does it work? Pretty much same thing as the ARIMA. So you have the expression of interest, and you have to declare in the RCC portal. And one thing that's different with Quebec is basically express entry system determines whether you qualify under one of their skilled worker programs. So usually if you score high under CRS, you're gonna eventually qualify in one of the programs. But even if you have enough CRS points, if you don't qualify under one of these programs, you're not gonna get your invitation. So you have to, qualify under CC or federal skilled worker or federal skilled trade in order to be invited. So once you qualify under one of the programs and then you have enough CRS points, then you will get the invitation in your express entry portal. And once you get the invitation, you make the application, PR application online. And one of the biggest difference between Quebec and federal program, I say it's the processing time. So Quebec has made huge improvement in that part, but still it's minimum 6 months of Quebec processing plus possibly about a year of processing in federal, so which is minimally 1.5 years of processing time. Express entry federal, we're talking 6 months maximum. So when you get your invitation and when you apply for your PR, you're going to become PR pretty fast. So as I said, you have to be eligible in one of the programs. So Canadian Experience class, it's 12 months of full-time skilled work experience in Canada. So it has to be acquired in the 3 years preceding the application. And work experience as a full-time student or while being self-employed is not accepted. So for express entry, your co-op internship will not be considered. And when we say skilled worker, again, it's the NOC tier 0, 1, 2, or 3. And there is the minimum language requirements. That's for tier 0, 1, you have to have level 7 CLB, or for tier 2 or 3, it's level 5. And it's all 4 language areas that you have to score. For the federal skilled worker program, there is a minimum criteria that you have at least 1 year of continuous full-time paid work experience in tier 0, 1, 2, or 3 in the 10 years preceding. So this one, you can have part-time equivalent as well. And for federal skilled workers, work experience as a full-time student or while being self-employed is also accepted. So for federal skilled workers, your co-op internship is accepted. And CLB 7 for all 4 language skills, either in English or French. And you have to have a minimum high school diploma or post-secondary certificate. And if you don't have Canadian diploma, you need to have, you must have done the equivalency of your foreign credentials. Yes, Gail.
Yeah, in the past, we had a number of graduate students come to the clinic, and they were wondering if while they're still doing a PhD, they can already go into express entry into this federal skilled worker program.
Yes.
Yeah, and would they ever be selected though?
If you actually like PhD student, if they already have more than 1 year of experience in their own country and meet all other criteria, yeah, they can be invited.
Yeah, because you know, like the ideas with having international students is also that they can be charged a much higher tuition. And so the uncertainty for us was whether the government would actually select those applicants, allowing them to access permanent residence before finishing their degree and thereby have a much more favorable rate of tuition.
Yeah, but now I think we're gonna see, you know, the cases with the points later on as well. But the program has become very competitive. The CRS score is pretty high. So if you don't have Canadian diploma or Canadian experience, it's gonna be extremely hard to get the invitation anyways.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, just a clarification as well, right? Regarding the, oftentimes we have students that they say they have full-time jobs during the summer, right? But because the fact that there's still, you know, on their study permit, then those jobs, from what I understand, they don't count, and it's only after they've graduated and they that the
No, for the
counting
so
of the work
basically
experience.
basically for the federal skilled worker program, your experience while being full-time student is accepted. But for the CEC, it's not accepted.
Okay,
So
so there needs to be a distinction that, yeah.
yeah, so basically express entry, because anyways, if you're studying, you're not gonna qualify under CEC. The only possibility that you know be qualified under express entry would be under federal skilled workers program. So this you may qualify probably if you have PhD degree, or if you're in PhD degree program, you probably have an experience in your own country. It's only 1 year of continuous full-time work. So yeah, the other thing about summertime job is if you're not working part-time during the session, if you're only taking the summer job for 2 3 months, that's not gonna count under federal skilled worker program because it's not gonna be a continuous
Mm.
experience.
Yeah, so the graduate PhD students that I have in mind, they were research assistants at the university. The issue that came up, and we weren't quite sure of what information to provide them. They did have like 1 year of continuous full-time work that was remunerated, but it was remunerated through a stipend, and so it actually they weren't, and so there was this uncertainty about whether it would qualify for this federal skilled worker program. They're just receiving a stipend for it.
This the remuneration part, I think I will have to double check for the express entry because I know that's a requirement for Quebec, but I don't think it's necessarily a requirement under express entry.
Okay, so I'll look into that as well. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, the federal skilled worker program, we saw the minimum requirement, but it's basically a point system as well. So it's out of 100 total. If you score more than 67 points, you can qualify under this program. So, and there is the federal skilled trades. It's 2 years of full-time work experience in one of the listed skilled trades and either valid job offer in Canada or a certificate of qualification in your province. So this is another category under express entry. So you have to qualify in one of those three programs. And then we do the comprehensive ranking system, CRS point system, which takes into account different factors that you see on the table. So there is a slight difference between the single and the couples. So basically, if you have created your express entry profile, then you will have your scores. And Immigration Canada usually sends out, invitation every 2 weeks or so. So there are different types of invitations. So there could be a general rounds of invitation, which invites everybody under any program, or it could be program specific rounds of invitation. So let's say the invitation is only targeted to CEC applicants, let's say, or it could be PMP programs, or it could be category based rounds of invitation, which is fairly new. So there is 6 different category. So first one is French language proficiency. So if you have actually level NCLC level 7, that's results on all 4 areas, then you're going to be considered to be under this category. Healthcare occupation, STEM, trade occupation, transport, or agriculture and agri-food occupations. So invitations will specify, which category, is targeted. So if we look at, past 6 months, how the invitations were, sent out, as you can see, the last one was yesterday, and it was CEC. There was only 400 invitations, and the CRS score is 539. The CRS total is, keep in mind that it's 1200. Okay. Before that, there was PMP, which is pretty high, 791. PMP scores are usually high because once you have PMP certificate, that gives you 600 points. So usually PMP invitations will always have higher CRS points. You can see October 10th, there was French category that was used for the invitation, 1,000 invitation. CRS score is relatively low. As you can see, it was only 444 points. As you can see, like all CEC for 539, CEC again 509, 507. So it's usually always over 500 points. You can see under French proficiency, it's lower than 450 usually. So it was once like 400 in July. And there was one healthcare profession in July, 445. Trade occupations. There was STEM occupations back in April, which invited 4,500 applicants, 491. So when you go into category-based invitations, CRS score tends to be lower. The last time we did the general invitation, it was back in April as well. To about 2,100 invitations were sent out. The score is pretty high. It's 529.
So, sorry, just to clarify, when it says general, are we talking about the federal skilled worker program, or could be to anyone?
CEC, PMP, anybody who has
Anybody.
a profile.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But who qualifies under one of the programs. So as you can see, Express Entry has been in place for a number of years now. It's quite predictable, to see whether you can qualify under one of these programs or not, in the near future. So once again, I will use the same example. So this time I just stated bachelor degree in Canada because your major doesn't really make any difference in the CRS score. So you're 28 years old, you graduated in a bachelor's program in Canada. You have IELTS score of 7.0 in all 4 language skills, no French. You have 1 year of skilled work experience in Canada. Then you get 436. So if you're a recent graduate, with similar situation, you're only getting, below 450. So this is not going to go, get you anywhere, near the invitation. 29 years old, you keep working in Canada, you get 2 years of experience, then you jump to 461. So you were at 436, where, you're getting maybe, about 30 points more, but you were still far from, getting invitation. Now you get to 30, and then let's say you worked hard on, your IELTS, you increase it to 8.0 in all 4 areas with 3 years of work experience in Canada. Even with this, you're only getting 502. So we saw in the invitation, I mean, in the past 6 months, the only time you would have qualified is actually none with 502. The only time that was closed was like in August 14th. The cutoff was 509. So you have a degree, bachelor degree in Canada, you've worked 3 years in Canada, IELTS score 8.0. I mean, it's pretty high. It's not easy to get this. And you're still not getting any invitation. Let's say similar, you have a degree in Canada, IELTS 6.0, which is, more reasonable. And then let's say you have to have Canada level 7 in all 4. You're getting 456. Last time, French 444, so you would qualify right away. French category based, never went above 450 for the invitation scores. So, yeah, Walter.
Yeah. So when we talk about the self-cancel score of NCLC 7, right?
Yeah.
Uh, what what would that be? For example, would it be intermediate, advanced?
Yeah, similar to B2, but I think, similar to B2, yeah.
Okay, because one of the questions that we've had oftentimes is, well, what if it's not yet? I mean, at what point at what level in which students start getting points for that French? Uh, for
The French
example,
points are given
yeah.
even if it's lower than NCLC 7, you're still gonna get the points under CRS. The only difference is if you don't have the NCLC 7, you're not gonna be considered to be, part of the French proficiency category. So for you to actually be qualified under, French proficiency category, you need the minimum you need is NCLC 7 in all 4 categories.
Okay, but that's for the French category, right? For the French.
Yeah, but
On the other
for
hand, for
CRS
the other,
points,
yeah, yeah.
for CRS points, you're gonna get points even if you get, level 6, 5, or 4. You're gonna still have, some points.
For the other categories that we're looking at. So it's not
Yeah,
a waste of time, to learn French if you've already mastered your
definitely,
English.
definitely. Because basically, as you can see, there's not much that you can work on to bonify your situation. It's either English or French
Mhm.
or your
Well,
experience.
because what might happen to what has happened to many international students is that they don't attain that B2 level that they have. They might be a little bit underneath it or whatever else, and then they might turn to express entry, CEC, and hope that they get some points for the French.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely, like if we're at 502, I mean, we saw like 502 is not good enough. But if instead of no French, if we had some points in French, maybe it's gonna go up to 510 or 515, and you may have better chance of getting that invitation because the lowest score that I see in the past 6 months is 509 under CC, but there was 510, 57. Actually, it's 507. Yeah, 507. So when it goes lower to to near 510, you may get the invitation. For sure, the last one was 539, so it's pretty high. So you still don't qualify, but that 5 or 10 points that you may get from French could be a game changer as well. But what I wanted to show is that this example shows you good. It's for general students who get their postgraduate work permit, work start working full time, even after 3 years at the expiry of your PGWP, you may not get the invitation. So that's why I'm saying yes, you may decide to go to other province because you don't want to learn French, but you have to understand getting out of Quebec doesn't guarantee you a PR. So you have to have a plan.
Mhm. And one more just quick thing is that we do have international students that they're working full time. They're getting like let's say 1 year, at least 1 year post grad work experience already, right? Um, but that work is still in Quebec. Unfortunately, their French hasn't yet probably won't attain the necessary B2 level. So they're worried. Well, wait a minute. If we're going to apply for outside of Quebec, won't we have problems because our work experience is in Quebec? And as well, do we have to be able to show like a job offer outside of Quebec in order to solidify that intention of moving outside of Quebec?
Yeah, that was my next slide.
Uh,
So yeah, can I apply to federal program while living and working in Quebec? The answer, the short answer is yes, but it's up to you to prove to the officer that you have the intent to settle in other province. So basically, yes, you're currently working in Quebec, but you have specific plans how you're gonna move out of Quebec. So first of all, the experience, your work experience in Quebec is considered Canadian experience. But since you're living in Quebec, it's up to you to demonstrate. I'm going to move. Let's say if your employer lets you work 100% remotely, then you could move to either Ottawa or Toronto and do the remote work. So signing a lease, outside of Quebec, that could be a good start. So it's usually like by law, it's you don't have to have tons of proof, but you still don't want to end up in the court proving your intention. So the easiest way is to have you know documentary proof that any reasonable person can think can accept that you're gonna move out of Quebec eventually. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we had a question from some students about when you're trying to establish this intention to reside outside of Quebec, what are best practices? Do you recommend that they submit this sort of settlement plan or this idea of how they will do that move outside of Quebec when they initially submit their PR application? Or should they wait until an officer sends them a procedural fairness letter and questions their intention? Like, what's the best practice for that?
the best practice is always plan ahead. So yeah,
Right.
you should not wait until the PFL letter, because that's your last chance. So it's
So
always
with
best
the
that you plan everything in advance. And if you can actually, look into, getting a residential lease outside of Quebec, as I said, that's a good start.
Alicia, or we like maybe a job offer, like not one that's validated, but just a job offer, or
Yep.
what other sorts of means, what other sorts of things can they show for this intention?
Well, I mean, mostly it's job applications, outside Quebec, lease if they have family members outside of, Quebec. That could be a good thing. Dollywall that I'm mentioning in the slide, you know, the person had, you know, strong ties with our families in Ontario, um,
Hmm.
things like that. So it's not a simple statement that's gonna convince an uh, an officer to believe that you're gonna move out of Quebec.
The
Right.
fact
And
that
so,
well,
sorry, Walter, just to finish this idea. So if they didn't have like a job offer or would like proof that they're applying for jobs outside of the province, you mentioned job application. So if they were like consistently applying to jobs in Toronto, could they use that?
Yeah, they can use that, but I mean that alone will not be sufficient enough. So for me, it's yeah, it's the residential lease that would be the most you know effective proof that you
Okay.
can bring.
Okay. Thank you.
yeah, Mike, my question is a permutation of that in the sense that the for international students that have been that only make that or look at the option of uh, outside of Canada after refusal of their CSQ. Now, does the refusal of a CSQ hurt their file of
Not necessarily,
applying for
not
outside of Canada? I mean, I've spoken to immigration officials who often say, you know what, if anything, it probably makes more sense that they're that they're going to move outside of Quebec. You know, provided, of course, as you said, that there's no, that they do some kind of reasonable, settlement plan as well.
yeah. I mean, it's like it could go both ways. I say yeah, because you applied for CSQ. An officer must could say you want to live you want to continue to live in Quebec, but the fact that your CSQ has been refused, a person could simply say I'm sick of Quebec, right?
Yeah.
So it's something that so it's up to you to, when I said like simple statement is not sufficient enough, but you still need, detailed statements about your settlement plans outside Quebec, right? So anyways, you have to declare your CSQ application refusal in your PR application. So the officer will know about it anyway. So you can bring it forward and explain, now that I have, my refusal for Quebec PR, I don't see any future in Quebec, so I decided to move outside of Quebec, which is, for me, very reasonable. You know.
Because one of the things that you said is also the question of the lease, right? The problem, I guess, financially is that uh, because of the way that the leases are structured in Quebec, it's like pretty much the 1st of July, right? So I imagine that the federal officer can't take that against them. The fact that, that they're stuck with that lease as long as the new lease shows like a serious intention for whatever time. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, I guess, at the time of the application either, right?
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, so, I mean, it depends on your, on the applicant's situation. So yeah, definitely. I mean, you cannot have, two leases, ongoing at the same time. But if you get the invitation, let's say, about now, your lease is until next July, then probably you're not gonna have your, residential lease by, by next July. So, but with your settlement plans, you can still, do the research where you want to move out, the which city you want to settle in. So you can do the research on that, and then bring all those documentary proof. So it's not simply stating that, let's say I want to go live in Toronto. Just simply stating that doesn't give any weight into it. But if you show that you've been, looking for jobs in Toronto, you sent out, let's say 20, 30 CVs, and you're looking, into, to the residential lease in Toronto area, you know, bringing
Yeah.
all those, documents, I think, that makes more sense and more reasonable, argument to the officer.
Yeah, I know we've been unfortunately we might even have to hold like a whole new session rather, but there are like the other PNP programs as well. The only thing with the PNP programs, from what we understand from the other provinces, is really the necessity of having previously either studied and obtained a diploma within that province, or having lived within that province. Uh, is that does is that still a valid observation?
Yeah, so I mean, the next one was actually the PMPs. So basically, the PMP programs, I mean, in my slide, you have the links. As you can see, let's say Alberta PMPs, there's always like streams for, equivalent to, skilled workers. So streams for workers, you have the streams for entrepreneurs. So mostly for stream for workers, we're talking about mostly job offers from an employer in that province. So that's usually one criteria that you must have. So basically, if you're, moving out of Quebec, you're not necessarily working in that province yet. So you're not going to qualify under these PMPs until you settle down in that province. So Alberta PMPs, you can see like, tourism and hospitality stream, Alberta opportunity stream, all those things, you need the job offers. BC PMP, pretty much same thing. You see international graduate, international postgraduate. I think even PC PMPs, they do acknowledge even like, Quebec diplomas under those programs, but that program also requires job offer from BC employer. So PMPs are usually the minimum requirement is having a job offer from a recognized employer in that province. And you're not going to get that job offer unless you're already working for that employer. Ontario PMP, same thing. It's this one's pretty much explicit. It says employer job offer program. So foreign worker stream, international stream, in-demand skill stream, all those three require job offer from Ontario employer. Master's graduate stream, it's a program that you have to graduate a master's in Toronto. It has a very small quota. It opens in one day, it closes the same day. So the PMPs, you know, for sure, if you're planning to move outside of Quebec, you have to decide which province. So you have to have, a specific plan on how you're going to improve your schools scores in the express entry, and also look into, plan B with the PMPs in that province. because you're not going to be eligible to apply under the PMP right after moving to that province. And you have the list of all the other provinces. They have their own programs, and it's pretty much the same thing. In pretty much all the provinces.
We were wondering, we had seen that for the Ontario, the tech draws in the human capitals priority stream, that there may not be this requirement of a job offer in the province of Ontario. So maybe we can look into that further.
Well, yeah, definitely. I don't know all the PMP programs, but like they do have the Ontario's express entry streams, which could be, interesting. It's according to your federal express entry profile. If you state, Ontario as your, preferred destination, they will look into your profile and, work from it as well, like under human capital priority stream or skilled trade stream. So if you have like slightly lower score than the invitation required for, federal program, you may qualify under, under the PMPs. But all those, you need to, study the PMP programs where you want to move out. Because it's not a given. People think, oh, French is too hard. I'm gonna just go to another province. But think, well, the PR programs have become very, very competitive over the years. And even if you graduate, I gave you the example of the points. Even if you graduate from bachelor's, like probably 10 years ago, that could have given you the PR. That's no longer the case. So even if you get 1 year, 2 year experience, sometimes you're not getting enough points. So there you go.
Yeah, there's like a question particularly regarding the PNP in the chat. Basically, a student asked if you graduated from, okay, must you graduate from the province of the PNP? What happens if a person graduates from Quebec? Would they still
Well,
be
if the
eligible for
PMP program requires the graduation from that province, then your Quebec diploma doesn't serve you anything for that program. So you're not going to be eligible for that program. So you will probably have to look for other programs in the PMP for skilled workers. So because usually each province has, several skilled worker programs under their PMPs. Like last time I checked, like BC PMP, maybe it has changed. Like BC, like Quebec diploma counts in one of the programs. But there are other criteria such as the job offer from an employer in BC. So
And once again, all of these and other questions we can answer at the LIC, right? It's about 2 o'clock. Kelly, is my timing correct now?
Yes,
we,
now you're correct. Yeah, it's 2 o'clock.
Okay, so Maitre Kim, would you like some more time, or at this point, do you have other professional obligations you have to attend to?
no, we can. I can answer some questions. Yeah, it's not a problem.
Okay, so for another, let's say 15 minutes, and then we'll close the workshop.
Yeah, so going back to some of the questions, the students were wondering about the Quebec skilled worker path. Are there minimum salary requirements?
No, there for Quebec programs, the PSTQ or the PEQ programs, there is no minimum requirement of salary.
Yeah. And then another student asked, can you apply to 2 Quebec programs at the same time? So for instance, in the PEC, not sure if that's going to work out, I'm guessing. And then also in the skilled worker or submit
at
a
the same time. Well, technically speaking, I don't see any prohibition to to have two files on the way. But I mean, usually whether you qualify under one program or not. So what's the point of applying for two applications at the same time? So
Yeah.
either you qualify under PAC or not. So if you qualify under PAC, there's no need to go with ARIMA. But if you don't qualify for PAC, the only other option you have is the ARIMA. So then yes, you have to go with the ARIMA. But then if you have the invitation under ARIMA, why apply for PAC at the same time as the PSTQ or PRTQ? It's double the work. So
And then that Walter's earlier question really brought to mind something that's popped up consistently at the clinic. It's students who want to run their chances with express entry while also applying for a Quebec-based program. So Walter spoke earlier about the situation where the CSQ has been refused. But what about where someone has a CSQ potentially in process or has submitted a declaration of interest in ARIMA for the skilled worker program, and they're also wanting to put themselves into the pool of applicants and express entry? What's the worst that could happen?
Well, having a profile in the express entry, I don't see any problem with that, even if you have a CSQ application ongoing. But definitely, if let's say your PEQ application ongoing, and then you had a profile in express entry, and then you are invited. Now, is it okay to submit under express entry for the PR application while your CSQ is ongoing? Because for the Quebec program, you have to have the intention to reside in Quebec, right? All Quebec skilled worker program definition of skilled worker in Quebec is have the intent to settle in Quebec, to work in Quebec. For the express entry federal program, one of the conditions is that you intend to reside outside of Quebec. So now, basically, you're making two contradicting declaration. Is it possible to have both intent? I think so. So, technical question is, when your CSQ application is ongoing, there is no requirement to declare to the federal that you have a CSQ application ongoing. So if you don't declare, RCC is not aware that there is a CSQ application ongoing, right? So
you're saying that it's only with Immigration Quebec that in the application process for the CSQ, they ask, what other applications have you made, right? But with the federal government, they're not asking that same question. Have you made any applications to remain in Quebec? No. Right. Okay.
No. They're only asking if you have any refusals, in the past, including CSQ applications. So
well, with the proof of the language requirements that need to be sent up front anyways, right? Wouldn't that eliminate a lot of the the so-called like the double these double demands? Because the only main reason if a person had qualified under the new EQ language requirements, then it would be of no interest for them to apply for the express entry programs, really where the person uh, does not qualify and has not qualified for the language upfront. Because once again, the way it's structured, right? The student has to provide that proof upfront and has to make a declaration upfront, because otherwise, if Immigration Quebec finds out that they don't have that level, that they could hit them with misrep during the interview.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the question may have been pertinent if the applicant is in overseas. But for people who are inland in Canada, you're already usually established in one province, right? So right now we're talking about, someone who's already living in Quebec. So I don't think there's gonna be a lot of cases where you want to apply for both, right? At the same time, because when you usually apply for Quebec, either PEQ or PSTQ, usually, you have either the invitation or the qualification for PQ, and you have a job, you have established in Quebec. So even if it takes, about a year more in processing, you can just, take this route. There is no reason to, double the process by applying under the express entry. Usually people go for an express entry because they know they don't qualify under PQ or under PSTQ. That's mostly the case. So if you don't qualify, first of all, PEQ, as Walter said, it's not rocket science, right? It's two conditions, right? Either you have an eligible diploma or 2 years experience in Quebec in a skilled profession, and French. So it's either you have this or not. So if you have this, then you can apply under PEQ and stay put in Quebec. But if you don't have this, and then you don't think you're going to have the French in the near future, that's when we're looking into express entry.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the students is asking if you're waiting for the decision on your PR, but your post-graduation work permit is going to expire soon. What could you do to extend your authorization to work?
Well, there is the bridging open work permit, either for Quebec or outside Quebec. So if your PR application is already submitted, and then if you already received R10 letter, the completeness check letter from the RFCC, you are entitled to have a open work permit.
That bridging open work permit is available for Quebec selected skilled workers as well, correct?
Yes.
And how long does it usually, is one thing that students have asked us, does it take a long time for this completeness check to happen, or is it usually quite quick?
It's not as quick as the federal programs, but it's quite fast. I'd say maximum 1 or 2 months usually.
Okay, great.
And if you're really like in rush, the other thing is you can always have the LMI exempt work permit with the CSQ holder category.
Right.
That's a
So if you
close.
haven't, so if a student hadn't yet applied for PR but already had their CSQ, there's this other type of LMIA exempt but closed work permit process that they
Yeah.
could go through. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there any more questions? I think that we went through the chat. If students haven't had their question answered yet, please enter it in the chat now. I think that we've pretty much done the tour.
Yeah, and we can also, once again, when you contact us to the Legal Information Clinic, we can also either provide, more complete information on this or answer any questions that you don't have, right? And once again, Maitre Kim is one of the lawyers on our network, our legal network of lawyers. And so what I'm going to do is thank you so very much, Maitre Kim, for your presence and, as usual, your wonderful insight on the mysteries of immigration and how to find the different pathways to Canada.
Thank you for the
That being
invitation.
said, yeah. So that being said, right? Uh, Deadlines, very important deadlines. Okay, Maitre Kim, if you can just maybe we'll finish off with that for November.
Yeah, deadline. So for the postgraduate work permit changes, it's November 1st. For PEQ programs, it's November 23rd, which means you have to apply before by November 22nd. So if you want to use the PEQ student stream with Concordia diploma, you your time is, yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty much up. You have less than 30 days.
Because of the
Yeah,
language tests we're seeing too. So how long it takes to get the official results for the language tests, right?
Well,
yeah.
basically,
That was one. No.
if you haven't done your French test yet, it's over. You're not gonna get your test result by November 23rd.
So
But
that
you
was the question
absolutely
that some
yeah.
students had. Can they just submit proof that they've taken with the unofficial test results? Do you think that that will work? I mean, obviously we don't know, but for students who have no other choice, what's their option?
You can always try, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's bound to fail.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
And there
I
and
cannot
there's no
guarantee.
language school that will offer results before November 23rd.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So one of the students
Okay.
said, so this was really excellent. Thank you so much, Maître Kim. It was so informative. Just to quickly answer the last questions, the recording will eventually be made available on CSU social media. Walter, is that the Facebook page?
Yeah, it's probably the Facebook page. Don't worry. If you have any questions, once again, contact us, right, as well. And it's just a question of we have to go through everything and deal with the technical issues, but it definitely will be available. And one good thing as well for graduate students, I just want to confirm that the GSA has um, renewed their LIC services contract at least until December, and that there will be apparently a referendum upcoming on GSA students that think it's important for graduate students to have access to the legal information clinic, and particularly to its immigration services. So that's it for today. And once again, don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions. We just want to make sure also that you understand as well. Um, we are not part of what is called the Student Care Legal Essentials Program. That is not part of the CSU services, and that's an external contractor. If you want more information about their services, you can contact them directly. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
thank you.
Bye. Thank you.